What if I told you the quietest person in the room could end up being the one no bully ever forgets? Stay with me, because once you hear how Jasmine Carter faced down the king of her high school without ever raising her voice, you might just see your own story in hers. Didn't your father ever teach you how to handle your own fights? That's what he said right there in that cafeteria, right after he flipped her lunch tray to the ground and laughed right in her face. Mashed potatoes sliding into her shoes, milk dripping off her backpack, everywhere else, silence. But she didn't cry, she didn't shout. She wiped her palms clean, stood up, locked eyes with him and spoke 2 words nobody had ever dared throw at Trent Calloway before. Move. Now. Nobody saw what was about to come, because nobody really knew who she was, or who her father really was. What started as petty bullying twisted into something bigger, something that couldn't be ignored, and by the time the last bell rang that day, the boy who ruled that school wasn't laughing anymore. Thanks for being here. Sometimes the tiniest moments carry the biggest weight, and today's story is one of those, quiet, fierce, and worth remembering. If it stirs something inside you, drop your thoughts down in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, you're invited to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Now, let's rewind and see how it all truly happened. Marion Ridge was the kind of town where you knew who your neighbor voted for and who your cousin slow danced with at prom. Perfect lawns, neat church bells, and secrets polished so bright they didn't even look like secrets anymore. Jasmine Carter had only been living there 3 weeks, and she already knew she didn't fit in. It didn't shock her. She and her dad had bounced around enough towns to learn that some places smile when you arrive, and some places make sure you understand you'll never belong. Marion Ridge High was definitely the second kind. She kept her head low, stayed focused, ate alone, and moved fast, but even fast wasn't quick enough to dodge Trent Calloway. He was exactly what you'd expect, the quarterback, the future prom king, a grin too wide and a laugh that always carried something cruel tucked inside it. When he looked your way, it wasn't to say hi, it was to remind you that you didn't belong. Jasmine's father had warned her about boys like Trent. Don't let them see you break, he'd told her that first morning. Don't give them that power. So she tried. But power doesn't wait to be given, it takes. It started with whispers when she passed by, his buddies laughing just loud enough to make sure she caught every word. Then came the mocking, her voice, her hair, how she moved. She pretended she didn't hear it, prayed he'd get bored. He didn't. Wednesday. English class. Room 212. Mr. Thomas droning on about the Great Gatsby while Jasmine scribbled notes, pen knotted in her hand, trying not to breathe too loud. Then, "Hey, new girl." The voice sliced through the room like a blade. She didn't look up. "I'm talking to you, Carter." Still, she kept her eyes on her notebook. Trent leaned back in his chair, that lazy grin sliding onto his face. Funny, isn't it? How some people show up where nobody wants them. The room stiffened. A few kids laughed under their breath, most stared at the wall. Jasmine didn't move, didn't answer, and that made him angry. "Maybe you're just lost," he kept going, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "A place like this, people like us, it probably feels a little too real for you, huh?" Jasmine's pen froze. Her chest squeezed tight. Still, she said nothing. "Hey, Carter." Trent leaned closer, voice dropping low. "You listening? Or is all that noise in your head too loud?" "Mr. Calloway." The teacher's voice cracked through the tension, sharp. "Do you have something you'd like to share with the class?" Trent leaned back, palms up like he was innocent. "No, sir. Just welcoming the new kid." Everyone pretended to refocus. Jasmine did too, until a note hit her desk. Folded tight. Ugly. She opened it. "Go back where you came from." She didn't tear up. Didn't flinch. Just folded it again, tucked it into her bag. But inside her chest, something locked in place. something cold, like steel. That afternoon, riding home with her dad, she stared out the window as they rolled past Main Street and the golden eagle statue in the town square. He glanced over once but didn't ask. Not yet. She climbed the porch steps alone, dropped her bag just inside the door, tried not to see her shoes, still crusted with slush where Trent had kicked snow on her that morning. The next day was worse. Friday. Lunchtime. The cafeteria hummed with trays clattering and pizza steam mixing with bleach. Jasmine sat alone, back corner, earbuds in, pretending the whispers didn't exist. But she felt it, that shift in the air, the hush that falls when something bad's about to happen. She looked up. Trent. Letterman jacket. Arms folded, grin sharp enough to cut. Behind him, his crew, Kyle, Madden, Liam. "You always eat alone?" he asked, tilting his head like he actually cared. She didn't reply. He nodded at her tray. "Maybe people just don't want to sit with you." Liam snorted. Kyle chuckled. Trent leaned in, voice low but loud enough. "Or maybe, you just don't belong." Her hands balled under the table. Still, she didn't blink. Didn't move. So he made his play. He grabbed her tray and flipped it. The crash echoed. Milk splashed. Plastic scattered. The cafeteria froze, eyes wide. Jasmine sat there, perfectly still. The whole room watched. Would she break? Would she cry? She didn't. She wiped her palms, stood, turned to leave, until Trent stepped in front of her. "Where you think you're going? We're just getting started." She drew in one breath. "Move." He blinked. What was that? She stared straight at him. "I said, move." A hush. Liam muttered, half impressed. "Girl's got a mouth on her." Trent stepped closer, teeth bared. "Or what? What's going on here?" Ms. Ree's voice snapped across the cafeteria, heels clicking, eyes sharp as glass. The assistant principal took it all in. Jasmine, Trent, the mess. Trent stepped back, all innocent charm. "Nothing, ma'am. Just a little accident." Ree turned to Jasmine. "Is that true?" Jasmine looked around. Nobody spoke for her. She swallowed. "Yeah," she murmured. "It was an accident." Trent's smile flickered. Over, or so he thought. The house was silent. Too silent. Jasmine stepped inside, fingers sticky with dried milk and cafeteria shame, her shoes still squelching from mashed potatoes mashed into the laces. She didn't bother looking at them. She dropped her backpack by the door, kicked off her shoes, and just stood there in her socks. "Jasmine? That you?" Her father's voice floated from the kitchen. Marcus Carter, the brand new chief of police for Marion Ridge. To everyone else, he was crisp uniform and quiet authority. To Jasmine, he was the man who always knew when something was wrong before she said a single word. She drifted into the kitchen. He stood by the counter, uniform shirt sleeves rolled up, a chipped blue mug cradled in his big hand. A half-finished report was spread across the table behind him. He looked up, eyes steady. She avoided his gaze. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah." She shrugged, dropped into a chair. He sipped slow, set the mug down. "Try again." She stared at the scratched table edge, let the words stick in her throat, then forced them out. "A kid at school dumped my lunch on me." The words cracked the room wide open. Marcus didn't flinch, didn't gasp. But his eyes, they hardened a notch. His jaw ticked the way it did when something inside him went very still. "Oh?" he asked. "Calm. Too calm." She hesitated. "Doesn't matter." His voice lowered, steel under velvet. "It does." She studied her palms. "Trent Calloway." Marcus exhaled slow, turned once, paced, then faced her again. "I know that family." She scoffed. "Of course you do." He ignored her sarcasm. And the school? What did they do? She looked away. Nothing. That word changed him. He didn't raise his voice, but it sharpened, like glass. Nothing. She nodded. Ree showed up, asked if it was an accident. I said yes. Why? Her voice cracked. Because it wouldn't have changed anything. Their parents probably sit on the board or donate a gym or own half the town. What's the school gonna do? Suspend the golden boy. She pushed the chair back, started pacing. You think they'd punish Trent Calloway? Please. Marcus stayed by the table, arms folded. Watching. Listening. And what message does that send? He asked. She froze. What? When someone does something wrong and nobody stops it, he said, voice level, what message does that send? To him. To you. She clenched her jaw. I didn't want to make it worse. Marcus walked over, rested a hand on her shoulder. Solid. Steady. You don't have to fight this alone. She swallowed, let herself lean into that for a heartbeat. What she didn't know was that her father had already decided he was going to fix it. Monday morning, the air was different. Jasmine stepped out of her dad's car, backpack slung over one shoulder, and felt it, a hush drifting through the school like a rumor you could taste. Heads turned. Whispers slid through the halls like wind before a thunderstorm. She barely made it 5 steps when someone whispered, "The police chief's in the office." Her stomach dipped. She turned toward the glass doors just in time to see him. Chief Carter, uniform starched, badge gleaming. Beside him stood Principal Warren, Ms. Ree, and 2 people Jasmine didn't need introductions for, Franklin and Janet Calloway. Trent's parents. Franklin in a sharp suit, wearing that slippery half-grin rich men wear when they think nothing can touch them. Janet, clutching her leather purse like it might save her. And Trent, standing there in the middle, looking cornered for the first time in his life. Jasmine froze behind the lockers, peeking through the narrow crack just as the office door swung open. Warren's voice floated out. "Chief Carter, I don't see why this had to go so far." Marcus didn't blink. "I took it this far," he said, voice even, "because my daughter was humiliated in front of half the student body, and your staff stood there and did nothing." Ms. Ree opened her mouth. "With all due respect, Chief." He cut her off, no raise in his tone, no anger, just final. "No excuses. You were there. You saw it. You let her take the blame." Franklin Calloway laughed, light and lazy, like he was swatting away a gnat. "They're kids. Come on. It was a misunderstanding." Marcus turned that calm, steady stare on him. A misunderstanding? He didn't need to shout. He never did. Your son bullied my daughter. Humiliated her. Harassed her. And not one adult stepped in. Janet sighed, pinched her brow like this was all beneath her. "Chief Carter, do you know how many silly little calls we get from this school? Boys will be boys." That did it. Marcus took one step forward, cold, controlled. "That," he said, "is exactly the problem. You raise boys like that and act surprised when they grow up believing they're untouchable." Silence. Even Trent shifted his weight, suddenly not so big anymore. Principal Warren cleared his throat. "Let's not escalate. I'm sure we can reach some understanding." "No understanding," Marcus cut in. "There's accountability." Jasmine, hidden by the lockers, felt her heart slam against her ribs. She'd never seen her dad like this. Not just her dad but Chief Carter, a man who didn't demand respect, he commanded it. Janet sniffed. "Trent, apologize." He glanced at his dad. Franklin gave a stiff nod. Trent turned, eyes flicking to where Jasmine was half hidden. His mouth tightened. His voice dropped, low and forced. "I'm sorry." Marcus cocked an eyebrow. Louder. Trent's jaw flexed. Red crawled up his neck. "I'm sorry. he barked, loud enough for the office to hear. Nobody believed he meant it. But it didn't matter. Something shifted. For the first time, Trent wasn't holding the strings. Marcus turned back to Warren. "This isn't done. I want to report on my desk. And if I find out this school ignores complaints like this again, I'll handle it myself." Franklin's smile cracked. "Chief, you don't want to make enemies here." Marcus didn't flinch. "Neither do you." He turned and walked out. And just like that, the storm broke over Marion Ridge High. By lunchtime, the whole school buzzed like a beehive shaken from the inside. Jasmine felt the eyes following her down the hall, felt the new hush that wasn't mockery this time. Some kids tilted their heads in her direction and nodded. Others said nothing at all, but their silence tasted different now, less cold, more watchful. But not Trent. Trent Calloway was a thundercloud in a Letterman jacket. She saw it in the way he shoved through the cafeteria doors, fists balled tight enough his knuckles blanched white. His crew, Kyle, Madden, Liam, trailed after him, quieter than usual, eyes darting like they were waiting for him to explode. She moved to the lunch line, grabbed a tray, breathed steady. She could feel Trent behind her, boiling. As she turned with her tray, he was there, shoulder against the soda machine, that smirk pasted on like glue that wouldn't stick anymore. "Guess Daddy had to fight your battles for you, huh?" The words hissed out, low enough that half the room could pretend they didn't hear. Jasmine froze mid-step. Her tray suddenly weighed nothing. She didn't look away this time. She turned, faced him square on. Trent straightened a little, jaw cocked sideways, trying to keep that king of the jungle swagger alive. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice soft enough it cut deeper than any shout. He sneered. "You heard me. Think you're special now? Think anyone actually gives a damn? The second your daddy gets himself transferred or fired or whatever, you're back to nothing. Nobody." She heard her own heartbeat behind her ears. Felt the cafeteria pause. Waiting. Watching. This was the moment. She could see it in his eyes. He wanted her to break. He needed it. She set her tray down on the table beside her. Didn't slam it, just placed it gently. Then she stepped forward. One step closer than he expected. "You're mad," she said. He blinked, thrown off. "What?" She tilted her head, voice calm. "You're mad because for the first time, you didn't get away with it. You're mad because everyone saw it. They saw you get put in your place." His nostrils flared. His shoulders squared. But he didn't move. She took another step. Didn't raise her voice, didn't jab a finger at his chest, just met his eyes. "You spent your whole life acting like a king, Trent. But you never learned how to lead. You only learned how to scare people. And today, no one's scared." She paused, let the words sink in like water seeping through a crack in stone. His jaw twitched, eyes darting around. His friends behind him, shifting, unsure. She leaned in a fraction closer, enough that her words stayed just between them. "Respect can't be forced. And you, Trent Calloway, you're not respected anymore." That word, respected, hit him harder than any punch. His lips curled. "Shut up." She almost smiled. Just a flicker. "Make me." That did it. He rocked back half a step, small, but everyone saw. He looked over her shoulder at the cafeteria. Kids frozen with pizza slices halfway to their mouths, whispers prickling the air. And in that heartbeat, he knew. The curtain had dropped. The crown was paper. And nobody was scared anymore. Without another word, Trent shoved past her, shoulder bumping hers, hard, but she didn't flinch. He stormed out, his friends trailing behind like shadows that didn't know where to hide now. Jasmine stood there, tray untouched, adrenaline pounding so sharp her fingertips trembled. She picked it up, walked to the same back corner table she'd sat at alone for weeks. This time, she didn't feel small in that corner. She felt steady, like the walls had stopped closing in. By the final bell, the whole building felt different. Kids looked her in the eye when she passed. Some didn't say a word, but their silence was a nod, not a sneer. A teacher paused at her locker and murmured, "Good job, Carter," before walking off without waiting for a reply. Trent didn't get expelled. There were no grand announcements over the loudspeakers. No big dramatic punishment to write headlines about. But it didn't matter. He'd lost the thing that had made him untouchable, the fear. Without it, he was just another boy with his name taped to a locker. She didn't need him to pay. She just needed him to stop pretending he'd already won. After the last bell, she slipped into the front seat of her dad's cruiser. He didn't say anything at first, just pulled away from the curb, windows down to the warm breeze. "How was school?" he asked after a few blocks. She let the question float for a moment. Then she cracked a smile. "Not bad." He grinned sideways. "Told you. Boys like Trent, they only get power if you hand it to them." She watched the houses roll by, tidy lawns, the same movie theater sign missing letters. "Yeah," she said softly. "I get that now." They didn't say much after that, just silence that wasn't heavy anymore, just real. Halfway home, he cleared his throat, eyes fixed on the road. "You know, I didn't stand up for you because I thought you couldn't handle it." She turned, surprised. He half smiled, just enough for her to see the lines near his eyes. "I did it because I knew you could." She didn't say anything. Couldn't. Her throat thickened up, words balled tight behind her teeth. She just nodded, pressed her palms together in her lap, and let the last of that old fear slip out into the quiet. There was no trophy. No round of applause echoing through the halls of Marion Ridge High. But something real had shifted, and she'd done that. All without raising her voice. The next morning, Jasmine walked into Marion Ridge High the same way she had every other day. Same bag on her shoulder. Same clean sneakers. Same calm face. But everything felt different. Not because the halls had changed, but because she had. Kids who used to look through her now made space when she came down the hallway. Some nodded, just a flick of their chin. Others didn't say anything at all, but the silence wasn't cruel anymore. It didn't scream outsider. It whispered, "We see you now." Trent Calloway never spoke to her again. Not that week. Not the week after. He still wore his Letterman jacket, still strutted through the halls like he owned every locker door and classroom row, but something in his stride was off. Smaller. Quieter. The laughter around him didn't stick the same way anymore. Some kids peeled away when he passed. Some just kept their eyes down, not out of fear, but out of something closer to pity. Because that's what happens when a king loses his crown. The throne doesn't disappear, but everyone remembers what's behind the curtain. And the illusion doesn't come back. She never got some big apology. No public speech in the cafeteria. But she didn't need it. She could see what she'd taken from him. The fear he fed on, drained away in silence. He couldn't get it back, not even with all his father's money or his mother's polite smiles. What Jasmine didn't see coming was the ripple that followed. It started small. A folded note slipped onto her desk during biology. She unfolded it slowly. Just 5 words in slanted handwriting. That was brave. "I'm sorry." It wasn't signed, but when she lifted her eyes, she caught Ally from the back row glancing away, cheeks flushed. Sorry for what? Jasmine wanted to ask. But she didn't need to. She got it. Ally hadn't stood up, hadn't said a word when the tray hit the floor. Neither had any of the others. But someone had seen. And now, the silence was cracking. In the days that came after, It kept happening. A kid she didn't know in her math class offered her a pencil when hers snapped in half. Another kid, Carlos from gym, sat at her corner table for lunch one day, didn't say much, just unwrapped his sandwich like it was nothing. They didn't hover out of pity. They sat because respect has a gravity. And Jasmine, the quiet girl, had suddenly become heavier than Trent Calloway ever was. At home, it was quieter too, but in a better way. She and her dad talked more now, sometimes about nothing at all, sometimes about everything that mattered. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, just sat together on the porch in the soft drift of a Saturday breeze, passing a chipped mug of cocoa between them like they were sharing something warmer than the drink. One afternoon, Marcus leaned back in his porch chair, eyes squinting at the yard like he was seeing something bigger than grass and fences. Then he said, "You know there'll be more Trents, right?" She nodded. "Yeah, I know." He sipped, paused, set the mug on the armrest. "But you're not the same anymore." She turned her head, curious. "Why not?" He smiled, slow and certain. "Because you found out what you're made of. And once you know that, they can't touch it." She didn't answer him, just tucked that truth away somewhere deep, a soft shield under her ribs. Because she knew he was right. The worst thing that could have happened had already happened. She'd stood in that mess. And she hadn't broken. No parade came down her street. No trophy for best new girl with a backbone. But every time someone made space for her in the hall, every time a whispered insult shriveled up halfway through someone's mouth, Jasmine felt it. She'd claimed something nobody could snatch back. It wasn't that she'd won some giant war. It was that the war Trent thought he'd already won had never belonged to him in the first place. That Monday, she stepped through the same double doors under the same flickering exit sign. Same lockers, same squeaky floor tile by the library stairs. But her shoulders didn't hunch. Her steps didn't hesitate. And the difference wasn't what changed around her, it was what refused to shrink inside her. People like Trent Calloway, they only stay kings if you bow your head. If you keep quiet. If you let them decide how small you get to feel. But Jasmine Carter had learned something nobody could unteach her. Power doesn't come from fear. It doesn't come from yelling the loudest or shoving the hardest. It comes from knowing you belong, right here, right now, no matter what anybody else thinks. It comes from refusing to move when someone tries to push you out of your own space. That's how bullies stay big. They bet on your silence. They feed on the hush that settles in when nobody wants to make trouble. They count on you to look down and pretend it's not happening. But the second you decide to stand up, even if your voice shakes, even if your knees knock, everything shifts. One whisper can drown out a shout if it's true enough. So if you've ever felt invisible, if someone ever made you wonder whether you really belonged, let Jasmine's story remind you, you don't need permission to stand tall. You don't have to yell. You don't have to fight with fists. You just have to decide that your space is yours and nobody gets to shrink you out of it. That's the piece nobody tells you growing up. We're taught to sit down, to hush up, to smooth things over, to stay small so we don't make waves. But bullies don't hate waves, they're terrified of them. They survive in the calm, in the quiet where everyone else keeps their head down and hopes the storm passes them by. Jasmine learned you don't have to tear down the walls. You just have to stand where they told you not to stand and say I'm not leaving. You don't have to roar. You just have to stop whispering apologies for taking up space you already own. That Monday, she walked through those halls, same girl, same shoes, same tired textbooks. But every locker door she passed whispered back at her, "You're not small anymore." She'd given the rest of them permission too. Permission to look up, to nod, to maybe say hey instead of pretending she was invisible. Trent never found the old fear again. He still had his jacket, his car, his father's smug connections. But fear is the only crown a bully really wears, and once people stop handing it over, there's nothing left for him to hold on to. He avoided her now, turned his shoulder when she passed, eyes darting for an escape route that didn't exist. Some days she caught him watching her, as if trying to understand how the smallest kid in the room had turned the lights on and left him standing in his own shadow. She never thanked her dad out loud for standing up in that office. She didn't have to. He knew. They both did. It wasn't about him fighting her fight. It was about him reminding her that she'd never been powerless to begin with. A few weeks later, Ally from biology sat across from her at lunch. No ceremony, no big speech. Just unwrapped her sandwich, looked Jasmine dead in the eye and said, "He used to pick on my brother too. I should have said something sooner." Jasmine shrugged. "You're saying it now. And that was that." They didn't become instant best friends. But for the first time in 3 weeks, Jasmine didn't eat alone. The corner table wasn't a fortress anymore. It was just a table. One evening on the porch, the sun dipped low behind the rooftops and the breeze turned cool enough to chase away the heavy day. Her dad sat beside her, same chipped mug, same easy silence. After a while he said, almost to himself, "You know, you didn't just stand up for you. You did it for someone else too." She leaned back, eyes on the dusk. "I know. Because that's how it works," she realized. One voice breaks the hush, and somewhere in the shadows, somebody braver than they thought they were takes their first breath of courage. Trent Calloway would be fine. Kids like him always find somewhere else to stomp their boots. But now Marion Ridge High knew what to do when the boots came down. They knew that silence doesn't save you. That a whisper, steady and true, can outlast the loudest laugh in the room. And Jasmine Carter? She didn't become a hero. She didn't want to be one. She just wanted to be heard, to be seen, to stand where she stood without flinching. Sometimes the biggest power isn't about winning. It's about making sure the other side doesn't win by default. Sometimes the strongest voice is the quietest one, the one that says, "This ends here." So if you're out there listening, wondering if your whisper matters, wondering if your feet are steady enough, remember this: you don't have to be the loudest. You just have to be the one who doesn't step aside. And when you stand your ground, when you say "I belong here," you're not just telling the Trents of the world who you are. You're telling yourself. And that's enough. Thank you for walking this story with us. If it sparked something in you, even the smallest ember, drop your thoughts below. You never know who your words might help find their voice too. And if stories like this, stories of quiet power, hidden strength, and the people nobody expects, mean something to you, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell, because the next story might just be the one you needed to hear. Until then, stand tall, stay steady, and never, ever let anyone tell you who you are.